Hello, and welcome to the First Star National STEAM Academy. My name is Dr. Keelan Bishop. I'm the director of the Academy and your host for today. Today, we are joined for a tech talk by Dr. Jaye Gardiner, a cancer biologist and comic artist based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for the moment. You know, academics be moving around, so maybe not for long. Jay, I hate doing the thing where like I read long bios and you have to sit and awkwardly stare at the camera. So why don't you tell the people what they need to know?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Thank you for attending this Tech Talk. Um, as Dr. Bishop said, my name is Dr. Jaye Gardiner. I currently live in Philadelphia, but I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. But even before that, my family is originally from Belize, Central America. So I'm a first generation American. I'm also a first generation college student and I do cancer biology right now. So, specifically studying pancreatic cancer. So, your pancreas is the organ. If you've ever heard of diabetes or what regulates your blood glucose level, your pancreas is the one that does that. And it's really hard to detect if there's cancer because it's like in the middle of your gut. So,
Right.
my lab is kind of trying to figure out ways to do that. But interestingly, we don't actually study the cells that turn into cancer. We study the cells around it that help support that cancer and see if we can kind of change that in order to stop cancer growth. So if you think of it kind of like a plant with the seed being the cancer cell, it's the soil that we're studying, trying to take it from a fertile soil that'll grow a plant and turn it back into a really dry, crusty, arid soil that'll stop it from growing.
Got it. And I have to go back because we hear about cancer a lot, right? So we know that we have like whole commercials about how to screen yourself for breast cancer because they're right there. And we know that like lung cancer is something where you might find yourself like coughing and you can like detect it. But you said the pancreas is kind of right in the
Right
middle
in
there,
there.
right? So when you're talking about people detecting it, how does someone know right now if they have pancreatic cancer? And in an ideal world that your lab and your research is working toward, how would someone know?
Yeah, so right now it's kind of bad. So pancreatic cancer is one of the worst ones because it's very, very hard to detect. So usually by the time it is detected and it's kind of everything goes off, right? If you get diabetes but you weren't pre-diabetic before, although there's also a little bit of uncertainty of like if you're diabetic, does that cause the cancer or is the diabetes a result of the cancer that's already starting and we just don't know yet. So usually having diabetes, seeing some sort of inflammation in that organ if you get a scan, usually it's you kind of feel like a lot of abdominal pain because some of the cancer is starting to go into the nerves and the surrounding area. Um, but I think most times it's like you kind of go in for something else, you get a scan and then they see something. And usually it's very, very late and it's already starting to spread throughout the rest of your body. So, for a very kind of dark, grim statistic there, it's only 10 to 11% of people will survive 5 years after being diagnosed.
Wow.
And yeah, so
So
it's
it's really
it's
deadly.
yeah, it's really, really bad. So uh Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman, he had pancreatic cancer, I believe. If anyone loves Jeopardy, Alex Trebek also had pancreatic cancer. Yeah, it's a very bad one.
Goodness. Okay. So a lot of need there and a lot of really pressing questions that we need to answer.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
So your life as a cancer biologist, you said it's like a plant. So you're studying the soil. So
Mhm.
what does that mean like on a day-to-day basis? Like what is it like for you to quote unquote go to work?
So mine is probably going to be very weird because I also do comics, but if we focus on the science side of my day to day, I can, if I do the very unappetizing, very basic description of it, I move small volumes of liquids around into different tubes. Sometimes I spin them really fast, sometimes I make them really cold, and sometimes I heat them up really hot. So that I
We're
know
in a
that's not like
we're in a lab, we're experimenting with things, liquids, we're spinning things, we're sampling things.
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
our day to day. We're in a lab.
I know, like, that's like not fun, but I mean, I mostly work with cells, so my lab is kind of cool in that we're situated close to a hospital where people are treated for cancer care. And so for the folks that are able to get surgeries, so by chance, it's detected early enough that it hasn't spread to the rest of their body and it's still very localized that they can try and just cut it out and hopefully those folks will survive. So they have a little bit of a better percentage, about 25% survive. So still pretty bad, but much better than 10. um, we can get part of those samples with their consent and isolate the cells out of them. So I'm actually working directly with patient cells that I do my experiments with. So I know that these are things that are truer to what was happening in the body, specifically because my lab also specializes in kind of having the cells grow in 3D. So instead of having it be flat on the petri dish, fibroblasts, so that's the name of the cell, the one that makes up most of that soil that we work with, those cells are actually pretty good at secreting something that's called the extracellular matrix. And when they do that, it creates more of like a 3D layer. It's kind of like the scaffolding of a house. And so, because we treat our cells in that way, they retain a lot of the biology that they had in the body, as opposed to if we just kind of kept them flat on the surface alone.
Right. I have to zoom up because we are deep in the cancer. We're deep in the weeds of cancer bio. In full transparency, I don't think I've said this before. I'm a cancer biologist too. So I'm a cancer biologist. Jay's a cancer biologist, and I'm very tempted to get into 2D versus 3D, but that is not it's not what we're gonna do today. So you do this work to retain these properties that cells have in the body and what makes them super aggressive, right? And the
Mhm.
goal is to have them eventually be less aggressive so that the
Yes.
cancer cannot be so deadly.
Yes.
So that's already a really important, I have to assume, really time consuming body of work from what I hear of your
Yes,
schedule.
definitely time consuming.
Yeah. So then you're also a comic artist. So how
Mhm.
do those things coexist? How do those things live together?
So, funnily enough, when I first wanted to go to college, so when I was in high school, I wanted to do art and illustration because my brother did drawing and I really look up to my older brother. And so I was like, I'm going to do the arts like him. So he went to school for photography. It's like, I'm going to do arts and illustration. Like, we're going to be an arts family. And then I had my chemistry teacher my sophomore year. His name is Mr. Michael Coy. He was also a musician and our science teacher, and he just made it so much fun. So he let us write song parodies where we switched all the lyrics to things about chemistry in the class. He just did all of these like weird, funky things that just kind of let us play and experience the chemistry. Like we also like learned things from the textbook, but he was much more creative with it, and it just inspired me to go into science. And then I took AP biology. I learned what viruses were, completely fell in love with it. I know no one's going to like that I say this now when we're in the middle of a
So you
pandemic
fell
because
in
of the
love with
virus.
viruses.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like viruses really got me into biology to just think about how there are things so small that are completely changing our bodies, and like it's technically not even considered alive, right? Because they need to be in a host, in a person, in an animal in order to replicate. So it's kind of like how did you come to be? How are you able to do all of this? And I just found it so fascinating, so that by the time I went to grad school, I was in the cancer biology program, but I was actually studying HIV, which does not cause cancer, but is associated with a lot of different cancers that develop in AIDS positive individuals.
Mhm.
But while I was in grad school, so to get back to your question about where did the art come from, I realized during that whole trajectory that I was just getting very, very narrow in my focus. So I started out as a biology major, and then I was a cancer biology, and then I was a virologist, and then an HIV virologist. And it just got so small that when I went to talks or when I was listening to people talk about the research, I found that I was starting to only be interested or really pay attention if it fit in that very small area that I was in, and I didn't like that. I missed the curiosity and the exploration that I had when I was first learning about science. And the way that I found that I can do that is by trying to explain science myself to other people in a way that doesn't use any scientific language at all. So just removing all of the jargon and by drawing it. So kind of going back to what I originally wanted to do. So I started this group with two other friends called JKX Comics to make science more accessible and remove it behind all of the barriers that exist for people in STEM.
That is so cool. So, okay, three are they scientists as well?
They are, yes.
Okay,
So
three
Dr. Claude
scientists.
Tran and Kelly Montgomery, all scientists.
So three science. That sounds like the beginning of a joke. Three scientists start a comic book company. So three scientists start a comic company, and what does this lead to? Like, tell me about one of the projects that you worked on, or can you show me something?
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked. So last year we had a crowdfunding campaign to create a physical book that I have right here called Gaining Steam. Very proud of it. And it has 7 different comics in it that's telling the science about, or the science from actual researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is where I went to school, or where we all went to school. But then it also has bios about all of the different scientists and the artists that created each comic. So it's the real people that are there to show how many different people are in science, to show that they have all different kinds of backgrounds. There's someone that you can identify with. If we go to the very middle. So this is Edna that I drew about her PhD research. And then there's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for our little comic. So even if you don't want the book, all of the individual comics are on our website for free because, again, accessibility. But we wanted the physical books so that we could donate it to places that are underserved for youth.
Wow, that's really cool. And you said it was a crowdfunding campaign. So
Mhm.
that means that people had the opportunity to buy books to support the company. And what was that experience like? How much money did you raise for that? Like what was that like?
It was wild. So we set out with an honestly modest goal of about 3,000 or $3,500 because we just wanted enough to kind of cover the print run, donate maybe like 25, 50 books to this really great organization in Madison called Madison Reading Project because they're always looking for books. And we were funded in 5 hours. So like we tried to stop looking at it, but like within 5 hours, like our community came and rallied behind us, friends and family, to all donate to this project. And in doing so, like they would get a copy of the book if it was successfully raised. And then it just kept growing. So our goal was, 3,500. We ended up raising over $12,000 to
That
like
is
get these books printed.
That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
so cool. I think a lot of times we see the kind of crowdfunding that's like for a tragedy, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool that that is kind of a return to what it was originally intended for, which is like, I don't know this person, but I think this project is really cool and I believe in the cause. And so
Yeah.
I want to give $5, I want to give $10. And it's just so cool that you had that community coalesce around the book. So, okay, we're going to take a slight turn, right? So you mentioned very early in your intro two things. One, that you are first generation American, and second, that you have roots in Belize. And so I want to revisit that. What does it mean to be first generation American?
That is a very good question. Man, there's so many different ways that I can answer that, right? So the first thing that comes to mind is being raised in two different cultures, but half not realizing that it's two different cultures. So for me, because Belize is English speaking, I didn't have the language barriers or like communication between like the outside world versus my home life that other first gen kids could have. But the two were very much integrated, but then I was still separate. So growing up, I would still have, other students, other Black students often ask me, like, what are you? And
Yeah,
it's just
where are
like,
you from?
yeah, just like I'm from here, I'm from Chicago, I'm Black. And they're just, but because either the texture of my hair, I don't know if the way that I look or something, they didn't believe me, would ask my mom if I was mixed. My mom's a very sassy woman and would just be like, you see me and her father, does she look mixed?
My
Like
daughter's Black. Next.
it's just like, here, I am Black, father is Black, here is my daughter, she is Black. uh, but it also means, so even though I didn't have that language barrier, it's still a very unfamiliar system, right? So my parents didn't grow up here. They don't know the educational system. They're effectively figuring it out on their own. And then if I'm going beyond where they could educationally, because there weren't really colleges in Belize while they were there, now there are, I'm going into college but in a different country, and so it's like, how do we do financial aid? Like, I have to figure that out. How do I register for classes? How do I make sure that I'm doing everything to graduate? Oh, my grades aren't good enough and I can be kicked out. Okay, let's fix that. Like, it was a constant learning experience. And for me, the reason why I'm here is broadly because of the suggestions from others. So when I was in college, there was a woman whose job it was to get marginalized individuals to try doing research. And so she found me after one of my chemistry classes and said, have you thought of doing research? And I went, what's that? Because at the time, so this is like 2009, 2010, the only research I knew about was, going to the library or like starting to look things up on Wikipedia. Like that was it. And but I tried it and I loved it. And then after that, I went home to visit my parents, and their landlord, so they rent an apartment in Chicago, and it's their landlord that had friends that, went into science and became professors. He was like, "Oh, why don't you think about going to grad school?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is. Sure, I'll look into it." And it was in that moment that I realized, oh, the people that I worked with were grad students and I like doing this. So
Maybe I
in
should be
order
in.
to do this, I should probably go to grad school. It wasn't because I knew what I could do with this degree afterwards or anything. It was just, oh, this is how I do that, or it's the only thing that was in front of me. And so being first gen makes all of that a lot more difficult if that information isn't in front of you.
Yeah, it sounds like you were really lucky to have those kind of role models to, show you a path forward where if you hadn't had that, it might have been like, oh, yeah, I kind of like science, but like not knowing that that could be a career, that, all of this school is necessary to even get to the point where people call you a scientist.
Exactly.
Um, so okay, so that was a lot for first generation. I know we have the second part, which is where your family came from. So
Mhm.
tell me. So okay, so let's see. We have North America, and then Mexico, and then Central America, and then
Yeah.
Latin America. So like,
Yep.
so where does Belize like fall on the map, right? Um, in a way that like we might be able to close our eyes and visualize it.
Easy. Okay. So you already laid out North America and then Mexico.
Yes.
So Belize, so if you go towards the end of Mexico, how it kind of makes like that swoopy tail,
Hmm.
Belize is right towards there. So Belize is bordered by Mexico on like the northeast side, Guatemala or northwest side because it's the
Okay.
it's water. It's the ocean on the other side, on the eastern side. So on the right side, if you're looking at the map, and then Guatemala after that. So it's like right in that corner, kind of at the top of what starts Central America.
Okay. Okay. And I know that Mexico, Central America, Latin America, a lot of folks from those regions identify as either Hispanic or Latino, or Latinx or Latina, however folks identify.
Mhm.
So, do you hold that identity?
So not really. So it's a little bit interesting where some periods I have and then some periods I haven't. Sometimes I feel like a guilt because I don't speak Spanish, but it's because of the history of Belize. So Belize was actually a British colony as opposed to a Spaniard colony. Um, and I think that might be the difference. But even growing up, like say if I wanted to apply for scholarships to try and help pay for college because my family didn't have the money, I've had mentors, so like my track coach in high school, kind of show me opportunities that was for Latina, like Latinx students, and it would literally list all of the countries and like Central America except Belize. And I think it's because of that history, but it also kind of gave me a complex because it's like, but I grew up eating tamales. It's like, but I like
Yeah, there's those
culturally, like
elements of
this is
share.
what I know. Like, why does that not count? And it's still something that I grapple with a lot now, but largely I don't identify as Latina.
That's so interesting. And I think it speaks to, even the story you were telling about your childhood, it speaks to the way we identify versus the way the world might identify us,
Right.
um, which is a whole nother tech talk that we could do. Is an entirely different tech talk. Okay, so we have covered what you do in your professional capacities, what you do in your professional, that's kind of the personal, being the comic art. We've talked about your background, and now I want to take all of this, right? And ask you, knowing all that you know now, having all of the experiences that you've had up to this point, if you could go back and have a conversation with like 12 to 16-year-old Jay, somewhere in like the trenches of puberty, what kind of conversation would that be? What tone would it have? What advice would you want to make sure that you imparted to make your journey a little easier, or maybe not to change it at all, but something that just would be helpful to know?
I feel like I would tell her, one, keep doing what you're doing. Two, people will be mean no matter what. So keep trying to stay true to you. I know it's hard, but believe in yourself. Keep believing yourself. Maybe believe in yourself a little bit earlier than
Mm.
I actually did. Like things, big things happen when you started to believe in yourself and actually apply to things. Because for a while I did it. I didn't think I was good enough, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that was something that I didn't learn until like grad school. So I definitely try and tell little Jay to like try. Just try a lot of things, explore, be open-minded, listen to people because, you know, mom and dad don't know all of what's here and it's not their fault. Um, so just listen to others, go to your counselor's office to like learn things some more.
Go meet that person.
Yeah, like I don't know if I ever did, other than it was like, this is what you need to graduate. And I went, okay. But it's also hard to not know what you don't know.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, I feel like those would be the biggest things. I wouldn't necessarily want to change anything, but just know like, hey, you're gonna do really cool stuff in the future, so keep at it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So if we are, thinking about the conversation that current Jay would have with younger Jay, I feel like we also can't end before we talk about what you want future Jay to look like. Like, what is
Ooh.
your right? So we went back and now we're throwing it forward. So, with the understanding that things change and dreams change and paths are not very often not straightforward, they wind.
Mhm.
And so this could be moot, null and void in like 2 days. Moment. What are your goals? What are you working toward?
So right now, I want to run my own lab. So the way that I work in a lab and do research now, I want to be the person that's the head of that and guiding other students to do research and to make discoveries into science. I personally, I feel like there's a lot of motivations for why people want to do this, and for a lot of folks, it's very focused on the science and wanting to help people and make discoveries, and that's absolutely important. I work in diseases, right? So either HIV or cancer, like these are things that affect a lot of people, and a lot of research is needed in these areas. But I think the thing that pushes me the most towards this job is teaching and mentoring, to take someone that was like me, that doesn't know what anything is, and to help them find a path, even if it's not that they want to be a professor in the future. Just be like, you like science, here are all of the things that are available, let me help you get there. Like that's the thing that I want the most.
That is amazing. And so it's so pure hearted. um so okay. I just want to say thank you so much, because I think that we covered a lot of ground, and this was actually just like a really good talk in a short amount of time. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you want to share with our audience? Our demographic, right, is high school students. That is who we gear these talks toward. That's who we hope tunes in. Some of them are interested in science or tech or engineering or arts or math. Some are just looking for the thing. They're looking
Mhm.
for their thing. So they don't know if STEAM is their thing yet. So do you have any last words of wisdom?
Yes, two things, if I may. They're short, I promise. The first is explore. So if you don't know if STEAM is your thing, try it. And even if you don't like it, don't feel discouraged. Figuring out what you don't like is just as important as figuring out what you do like, because both things are helping you narrow down your list and figuring out what you want to do. The second thing is, if you like multiple things, that is also okay. There are ways to combine them, especially with STEAM. So you can, if you like law and science, you can be a patent lawyer. Like there are jobs that do that. If you like business and science, who do you think's running the companies? If you like art and science, you can make comics, you can do all different sorts of things. Music and science, there are people that do that. And new things are being created all the time. Like TikTok wasn't here like 5 years ago. You could be a content manager if you really like social media but want to do it with the science angle. There's so many things you can do. So just don't give up your hobbies and your passions while you're trying to figure out what you like or what you want to do for a career.
I love that so much. And it's such good advice. And I feel like more than just saying it, you're living it, which is always super inspiring. Like we get to see a cancer biologist and comic artist, like what that looks like. And
Mm-hmm.
then she's also saying, well, if you want to be a multi hyphenate as well, it's within your grasp. So
Yes,
love, love.
absolutely.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope that you loved Jay as much as I did. If you are interested in this tech talk and want to see some more, sign up to receive updates. We are at firststar.org/STEAM. All of our tech talk summaries of these amazing folks who have decided to share their stories with us. And if you're more of a social media person, we just talked about social media. We are on Instagram. You can follow us at First Star Academies or at First Star Steam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Jay, thank you so much. And until next time.
Bye, all. Thanks for